What's going on, my fellow Kano Lords? So tonight I'm going to be reviewing Flow, which is an animated film that's written and directed by Gent Zilbalodis, who is actually a Latvian filmmaker, which is really cool because we hardly ever hear films coming out of Latvia. I don't think I've ever seen a Latvian film up until this point. Not sure. Maybe I did, but I just didn't know. But anyway, Flow is a film that I had no idea existed until a week ago. This movie completely flew under my radar. I just happened to see some, like a promotional teaser for it on Instagram through the Janus Films profile, or I like to personally call Anus Films. And I was like, this looks like my cup of tea. Like this, it's not only is it starring a black kitty as the main character. I have a beautiful black cat of my own, one of 4. Well, the other 3 aren't black cats, but I do have one black cat. He's my first cat that I've ever owned. But everything else was like, this looks like my cup of tea. I heard that it's like completely visually driven, 0 dialogue movie. And I was like, damn, this is a film that came out of nowhere for me, and it seems like I'm going to really love it. And yeah, so just to cut right to the chase, after watching this movie, I thought that Memoir of a Snail was gonna be the movie of the year that made me cry the most. I was wrong, because Flow took the cake on that. By the ending of this movie, I had a whole sob session. I was an absolute mess. It's been a long time where I've had to sit through the credits just to kind of compose myself and, kind of snap back into reality, because this was a really emotional movie for me. It was an incredible, it was an existential, spiritual journey about nature and planet Earth. It's an experience that I really cherish, and I can't express enough how important it is that everybody goes out and gives this film a chance. And I know that there's going to be some people, I'm sure there's going to be some people out there who watch this movie and say they didn't like the way the animation looks or something, it looks cheap or whatever. Personally, it did not bother me at all. I actually kind of found it unique, and also made it feel more rustic, you could tell this is a real passion project of people coming together and doing the best they can to create an actual mature animation. And to me, it just kind of makes it that much more special personally. And again, this is a film that, as I mentioned, is purely visually driven. There's 0 dialogue in this film. All you hear is some animal noises between each other, but that's about it. And even then, it's quite subtle with it. It's not overbearing at all. And it manages to be riveting and so interesting and so engaging from start to finish. Conceptually speaking, what this movie is you have, presumably it starts out with just animals on the planet. No humans really. You could tell that there were humans, but they're no longer present. And then this just giant apocalyptic flood sweeps the earth, and the animals that we follow in this film are basically all in the same boat, no pun intended, and they're just trying to survive. And the thing is, don't go into this movie expecting it to be a real life depiction of, oh, this is what it would be, this is how animals would behave, if the world was coming to an end. It's, even though it's not necessarily a movie for children, it still does have this very lighthearted, fantastical approach to way animals are interacting with each other. But I really did love that about it. I loved it about it, because it uses that as a way to kind of again, tell this very story about unity. And even though this film is about, all we see are animals, it does feel like a very human film that does have important things to say about humanity and our existence and the oneness that we share with all living things. And it's just, there's just, this movie offers so much. And one thing that I will say about this movie is that in comparison to other animated films that, you know, usually are made for children, this one is shot and directed much more cinematically. I'll just say that. Like there's a lot of like, there's Dutch angles, there's one-shot sequences, you know, there's you know, unique framing choices that, you know, have depth of field and things like that. So that was another interesting thing about this movie when comparing it to a conventional animation, in terms of like presentation and the way that the camera is directed. It feels a lot more cinematic, and I thought that was really cool about it as well. And again, like I think ultimately, like thematically, I think there's a huge element of this film that is about climate change. You know, of course, with the giant flood coming in, and I mean, it's hard not to think that the filmmaker wasn't inspired by the biblical Noah's Ark story. I mean, with the worldwide flood, and with, you know, different creatures being on a boat, it was hard not to think of that. But I do think that this movie, if it was inspired by that, has a much more like environmental theme to everything. And like all these little animal characters that we get throughout the film were just so interesting to watch, and they all have arcs and they all have meaning to them. And like you have, you know, beyond the beautiful and cuddly black kitten that we get, you know, we have a capybara in the movie, which I also just loved, like his personality and what his character represented and his role in on the boat and everything. You have a lemur, I believe it's a lemur, basically a monkey on the boat. Then you have a dog, specifically a golden retriever, and then a big bird. I don't know what this bird is called because I'm a fucking idiot, but this big bird that comes into play in the story. And I gotta tell you, like the art, like a lot of the things surrounding that bird and the relationship that bird had with the black cat was so moving and just got me so emotional. There's this one point in the story involving the bird and what basically causes the bird to be on the boat. I mean, I was in tears for a while, and that was also something that was hard for me to recover as I was watching the movie as well. But yeah, loved that. And like there's very like, and look, the reason why I say this in the beginning isn't really for kids is because, one, the obvious thing, zero dialogue. I mean, you can show this to a kid. I just don't know if it's gonna hold their attention in the same way that a conventional like Disney animation would. But obviously, like it having no dialogue, I think that will be a little tough for a kid to sit through. But there's also like very artsy choices. There's this one scene, again, like involving the bird. It's like it's like the climax of his character. And it was a very out there artsy choice. And even in my head, I'm still thinking about it because it was a sequence that I did not see coming. And it just felt very spiritual and existential and like astronomical. And the imagery there was just so like otherworldly. And it was just, again, like there's moments like that that are just very, there's not that many of them, but there's a few like that that are just very, I don't know, they're so moving in a very just like larger than life level. And the score that's there too, like the score is a whole other thing as well. The score to this movie is so good. I love the score through and through. So many moments where like the gravity of the situation and the emotional weight of it all was amplified because of that music, and it was just so moving. Yeah, it was just wow. I mean, there's also a whaled character in this movie, and wow. All I'm gonna say is, like, for all those who have seen Werckmeister Harmonies, I won't say where it's at in the movie because I don't want to spoil it, but there's something in this movie that reminded me so much of Werckmeister Harmonies, and it just moved me to absolute tears. It was so hard to get a grip with it. It was just like, I don't know, it was just beautifully displayed, wonderfully presented. I just felt every ounce of weight with it. It was just really, really well done. And it's a very, like, subtle movie too. Like, there's a lot of, like, metaphorical things with the characters as well. And I don't know, like, I might actually make like a scene analysis or something to the, because I want to talk more in depth about it. But right now I'll keep it more, spoiler free. But yeah, this is a movie that constantly has your attention, constantly has something to say, whether it just be about the characters themselves or larger themes. And the world that it just creates is so engrossing. Like, the world building on its own is just so, like, it's a whole other level. And I really loved it. Like, there's a lot here too about just, like, the cyclical element of nature as well. And that's kind of told through symbolism as well. But yeah, my God, this movie kind of blew me away. Like, I really, really loved this movie. I cannot recommend it enough. Like, just almost everything about it, like, I really loved, honestly. I guess I'll go ahead and share my rating for it. I'll give Flow right now a solid 9 out of 10. Again, maybe some people might think that's a bit generous, but personally, this was just like it's a very Carlos core movie. Everybody who knows me knows that I love, like, visual storytelling more than anything. I love movies that rely on visuals and sound and music to really, like, tell the story, give us information, express emotion, and this movie just does all of that while also containing, very important emotional and existential themes regarding nature and our place in it. And I just really, really loved it. I really did. I think this is an incredible film. If this movie, like, somehow was able to win the Oscar for Best Animation, I would be ecstatic. But for some reason, I don't think it will, because the Oscars hardly ever give the movie that actually deserves it, especially in the Best Animation category. They usually give it to fucking Disney. It could be like Moana 5, and they'll just give it to that. But yeah, anyway, that's probably it, guys. That's probably all I got to say about it. Hopefully I said everything I really wanted to say off the dome. But yeah, I guess that's about it. All I can say is that if you have a screening near you, go and watch it. Don't wait. What's really cool about it is that it's being distributed by Janus Films, Anus Films, which means that it's I'm like 99% sure it's gonna get a Criterion release, which is so fucking cool. That's like a day one buy. And by the way, I actually have a surprise Criterion haul that's gonna be coming in the mail soon, so be on the lookout for that this week. But anyway, that's all I gotta say about the film, guys. I really loved it. I thought it was touching, moving. The animation's unique and interesting. Just loved so much about it. Can't recommend it enough. That's all I gotta say, guys. If you really enjoyed what I say about the film, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.